FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's 6/20/19. Well, gold markets taking off to the moon. Is it the winds of war, or is it fundamentals, or does it matter? In any event, gold's trading right around $1,383 the ounce. Silver, a big performer, up to $1,538 on the bid. Well, uncertainty, political uncertainty, it just seems like it's something that you have to learn to live with. And certainly in the age of Trump, well, it's Trump against the world. Well, not quite. There is an organization that is fighting the technocracy, the technocratic attempted informational coup to provide you with only their take on things, the liberal take. Person I have been a big admirer of, followed his work for over a decade now, is a gentleman by the name of Brent Bozell III. Brent, MRC, MediaResearchCenter.org. I am a big fan of yours. You've been ahead of the curve on what's happening with the biased media, and you have a new book out, just came out recently, called Unmasked, and exciting to have you on to hear you talk about the book and Unmasked, the media's war against Trump. Thank you so much for coming on. So what do we do here as individuals when we see Google, Facebook, even Pinterest, even Patreon, all of these platforms are aligning against conservatives and trying to suppress message of free-thinking people?
I think the movement is finally recognizing what we've been trying to impress on it for 2 years, which is that we're looking at the greatest act of censorship worldwide in the history of mankind. Now, that is a rather heady statement to make. There is no hyperbole in that statement. Just consider these facts. Facebook reaches, you can talk about NBC all day long. NBC reaches 4 million people. Facebook has an audience of 2.2 billion. Twitter has an audience of some 700 million. Google controls 92% of the search engines worldwide. YouTube has, I believe it is 5 billion video views a day. There has never been a communications force anything like social media today. This is not a proposition that looks at the United States. This is worldwide. The rules don't apply to the United States. They apply worldwide. And what you're seeing with growing intensity is all of these platforms, and you named more, all of these aggressively, with increasing aggressiveness, targeting the conservative movement and attempting to vilify the conservative voice so dramatically across so many issues, across so many platforms worldwide, that the movement itself faces extinction. This is not hyperbole. When, for example, if a person says, quote unquote, a woman is not a man, and that person is banned forever from being on Twitter, you get a sense for where Twitter is going and the agenda Twitter has. When you've got on a daily basis people saying, I've just been knocked off of Facebook, I've just been put on Facebook now, I've just been suspended from Facebook, and it's always conservatives.
Always.
It gives you a flavor. When Twitter shadow bans, and we find that there is a process where you think you're reaching your audience with a tweet, but in fact, you've been blocked. You didn't know it. And it turns out that the only people who were banned, there were 4 members of Congress, and they were all from the House Freedom Caucus, the conservative group. When you have, I can go on and on with these examples. When you have YouTube, demonetizing organizations like Dennis Prager and Prager University. These are videos that could be at Harvard, SMU, or Christendom College. They are intellectual videos about things like the Korean War. But he's a conservative, and he's got a massive audience. They've demonetized him so that he can't fund what he's doing. This is not, I'll go further, Gary, this is not just the platforms. This is the service organizations. Apple is involved in this. Microsoft is involved with it. Chase Manhattan Bank won't process checks. PayPal won't process checks for Christian groups. This is how serious it's getting. Their goal is to ban the conservative movement from the public conversation.
Now, obviously, President Trump knows very well what's going on because he's such a big social media user. Both Twitter, obviously, those are his most famous ones, but all over the web. And we see that the Justice Department's opening up an antitrust investigation against some of the main social media companies. Is there a way to fight these people? I know our good friend Jordan Peterson, gentleman from Canada, has started his own platform. I think it's called summit.news. And you see that other people are trying to fight this. But if you get banned by Google, if Google twists the algorithms and blocks your searches, don't we have civil rights? I mean, look, government obviously can't infringe upon our civil rights. We have redress. But when corporations infringe upon our rights, I guess what I'm saying is, Brent, that the internet is, as has been said many times, is the new town square, and they need to be treated as a common carrier, just like AT&T or Verizon can't say, Brent, we really hate your message, so you can only receive incoming calls. You're not going to be able to make any outgoing calls except to call 911 when some crazy liberal attacks you. We need to treat these as public utilities, as common carriers, and the banks as well. When did the banks acquire the right to discriminate against law-abiding businesses who use their services for legitimate purposes? There's something really skewed here. I got to believe that Attorney General Barr is going to do something about it.
Well, there's a mouthful here to respond to.
Sorry about that.
I like what you're saying. I like what you're saying about Verizon. But the analogy is Verizon not only not letting you make outgoing calls, but not letting you receive incoming calls either. Just simply just barring you from using the phone. These companies, just to put in perspective how powerful these companies are. A study was conducted at Stanford University by a liberal professor who determined, and there's a video called The Creepy Line, and it's truly frightening. He determined that Google has the power through its search engine by manipulating algorithms. It has the power to decide up to 80% of an undecided vote in an election. Now, the last few elections have been very close. That gives the Google the power, the theoretic power, to control a United States election. There is antitrust. There are two vulnerabilities these companies have. Let me back up. Yes, there is that challenge. There is a challenge to Twitter that's developing called Parler. As things now stand, good luck, fellas, in trying to beat Twitter. Good luck, fellas, in trying to challenge Facebook. As things now stand, Facebook will just gobble anything in its way like it gobbled Instagram. Google will goggle anything in its way like it goggled YouTube. You think if you want to do a competitive bid with Apple, you're going to win? No. These are the realities of business today. Because of this, you broke up the Ma Bells in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s. That is what needs to happen with these guys. And there are two issues, I think, Gary, that are being looked at. One is the idea of antitrust. These companies are just too big, and there is no longer an opportunity to compete. You've got to make it competitive. The second one is Section 230 of the tax code. You mentioned the public square. And here's the interesting thing. Facebook, Twitter et al. Have argued they are the public square and therefore can't be held accountable for what happens on there. So that you look at things like Wikipedia, and Wikipedia has never been held liable because they were the free marketplace of ideas. And this is how they testified in Congress. The problem is they're not. The problem is increasingly the evidence continues to mount about the political agenda of these companies and how they are stacking the deck. If they lose their Section 230 protection, then suddenly all sorts of bad things can happen to them, which is why 2 nights ago, Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri introduced legislation to look at that Section 230 and say if these people don't abide by these rules, they will be liable on it. If they are, they're no longer immune to legal action. And then let's see what happens.
The floodgates open. Hey, so 2 things about what you were saying. So number 1 is that Facebook and Twitter, governmental entities release emergency information to them. They pay them for this privilege. There's a lot of government money that go into these 2 companies, just as for instance, Google as well, so that they can send out these emergency broadcasts. So when they're allowed to cut off users from their subscription base, they're effectively cutting off that government message that would otherwise be received. The other thing I'm thinking as I was listening to you is I'm really against government doing anything as far as speech goes, but certainly not becoming a deliverer of the message. But if their government opened up certain Twitter-like, Google-like, and Facebook-like applications open to all by law, by statute, because it's a government forum, so therefore you can't discriminate against speech, and force these entities to take those channels, and all speech people are welcome, any speech from anything. What would that do? And is that a potential solution?
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Today's show is brought to you by U.S. Gold Corp. U.S. Gold Corp is a U.S.-focused gold exploration and development company advancing high-potential projects in Wyoming and Nevada. U.S. Gold Corp has consolidated a district on Nevada's productive Cortex Trend and is advancing the Copper King project towards production in Wyoming. Led by a team of prolific company builders and renowned explorers, including Dave Mathewson, who is directly responsible for several major Nevada gold discoveries. U.S. Gold Corp is well-capitalized and has an extremely tight share structure with less than 20 million shares outstanding and trades on the NASDAQ, a major exchange under the ticker symbol USAU. To learn more, go to usgoldcorp.gold. That's usgoldcorp.gold.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
You know, Gary, I think you're hitting the nail right on the head. Do we or do we not believe in the First Amendment? Let me get back to in a second what these companies think. But if we believe in the First Amendment, if we believe in the right of free speech, which we all acknowledge goes to the war, it is not unbridled. There are restrictions on free speech. You can't yell fire in the movie theater. You can't put the F-bomb on your license plate. But those are the exceptions. Otherwise, it's almost a sacred right. Here's the problem. You don't have free speech on the social media platforms. And that is exactly what we're addressing. And when you break those companies up, that's the only way to have free speech. So a conservative should be very much in favor of looking at antitrust legislation. Now, I don't want to go there. I would prefer not to go there. We put forward a four-tiered recommendation to Facebook that they needed to embrace to avert any more of these problems. They're so simple. Number 1 is clarity. What do they mean? What are the rules that they have? You know, they say that they're the open marketplace of ideas. Do you know they've got 1,400 pages of rules, and 400 pages are devoted to the word hate, which is why their hate becomes the reason why everybody gets knocked up. So clarity, what do you mean by this? And when they do give an answer, it's just this gobbledygook legalese no one can understand. Let's be clear about it. Second, Transparency. How does it work? Who's in charge? I don't want their algorithms. I want to know who's making the decisions. To what degree is the Southern Poverty Law Center making decisions at Facebook and whatnot? The third one, here's an interesting one. The third one is conservatives need to have an equal seat at the table, not a seat in the kitchen, but equal seating in the table in this discussion. And the fourth one, and this is the important one, that these companies need to embrace the First Amendment. Now, what's happening? They're not doing it because, I repeat, these are worldwide corporations. And Facebook itself has stated that it believes in the European model that puts virtue over freedom, when in the American constitutional model, you put freedom over virtue. And therefore, Facebook is not embracing the Constitution. So First Amendment, Second Amendment, they mean nothing to Facebook, which is why the NRA gets banned from Facebook. And I'm just saying Facebook, but it's the other platforms as well. And First Amendment groups are also being banned. We have to understand at all times this is a worldwide corporation, but it is imposing worldwide norms on the United States.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. This is really alarming. It's un-American. There was another one state, I don't know if it was Texas or Florida, my adopted home state, was talking about, hey, we're going to impose state penalties on any of these social media outlets that discriminate against speech. I don't know if anything has happened. You know, another thing that we're up against here, Brent, is that these platforms have so much money and they've totally corrupted the congressional process, which is why you don't even see Republican lawmakers, for the most part, objecting. They're sitting back idly. I think they're really happy about it because they're as guilty and they're as open to criticism and ridicule through Twitter and Facebook as anyone else. So they're happy when these outlets get shut down, and that's a huge problem here. To quote the Carpenter song, "We've only just begun." I saw this. I've seen this happen before. When I started the Parents Television Council, and we were looking at the issue of indecency on broadcast television being governed by the FCC, but constitutionally mandated by the Supreme Court. You would not believe the money that poured into Washington to hire lobbyists to fight us. It's happening again with these social media sites with deep pockets with no bottoms to them. There was one study that was done that said that last year they spent $50 million. That's $50 million on lobbyists in Washington, D.C. And I will tell you, Kerry, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what they're willing to spend now. And you're seeing it. Money is flying everywhere. Donations are being dangled to conservative organizations. Members of Congress are getting the contributions. This is how corrupt this town is. This is how corrupt the political process is. It happens when they want to get something done. The big boys get something done. This is not a situation where small business has any say. It is big business that runs Washington, D.C. Now, that sounds crazy talk. It just is. Totally
Look at the contributions.
We know it. And that's why Trump is really the breath of fresh air that we've all been waiting for.
Oh, yes. And what happened with Trump, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what happened with Trump, he went around this whole thing with Twitter. He just bypassed everything. They didn't see him coming on Twitter. I've spoken to people. I've spoken to Don Jr. about this. Don Jr. is being censored now by Twitter. His things are being knocked off the air. The Twitter has even said that it is going to be monitoring the president of the United States. Think that one through. I asked Don Jr., are you folks concerned that you are going to be censored? And he said they're absolutely concerned. In the case of Twitter, it is Jack Dorsey who has said, the founder of it and the guy who owns it, has said that they can no longer, I'm paraphrasing him, he said this last month, we can no longer afford to be neutral. Bingo. So there goes Section 230 for Twitter. But he has said that they're going to war. Now, in the case of Facebook, I do believe it's not Mark Zuckerberg. I have had conversations with him, and I believe he's a leftist. He'll be the first one to tell you. But being a leftist is different than being an ideologue. Underneath him are the ideologues, and they're the ones who are implementing the agenda. Some left-wing consortium of 90 left-wing groups led by the ACLU put a set of demands last fall on Facebook. As soon as they did this, Sheryl Sandberg, the number 2 person at Facebook, was in Europe, and in a speech, she said that the implementation of those demands was going to be one of her highest priorities in 2019. Since then, she's been meeting with them, and she refuses to meet with the coalition. We set up 52 conservative organizations. She has declined to meet with us.
Really? Why am I not surprised? So what if Trump just sends in the troops, seizes these companies? Obviously, we would hear everything, thrown at him. But what if it really requires drastic action, like what we're talking about?
Because, I wish he wouldn't. You've got to use the legal process here, and I think that's going way beyond.
They're an imminent threat
to do.
But they are an imminent threat to the country, to the well-being.
They are an imminent threat, but there are other avenues. For example, where is the Federal Election Commission? It should be involved. These are illegal contributions that they're making to Democratic candidates.
Contributions
you can unleash the power of the government, not take it over, but you can unleash the power of the government to exercise its constitutionally mandated authority.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Agreed. And, we could go on and on about this. It's really alarming. It's fascistic. Talk about the projection of the left. They're always blaming the right for being fascists and anti-freedom and everything else. And then you look at these types of actions here, Brent, and you know that this is pure projection, plain and simple, that they are the greatest offenders of what they proclaim the right to be.
Yeah, we've seen this for years. The left embraces and says that it's embracing tolerance, and it attacks conservatives daily on intolerance. Oh my God, you've been attacked. Your industry has been attacked viciously as being intolerant. Although, what are you doing? You're an advocate of free speech. But all you have to do is go to Hollywood. I set up this organization in Hollywood, and the intolerance of the far left that controls Hollywood is unlike anything you could possibly believe. If you're a Christian, you pretty much need to put the sign of draw us the sign of the fish in sand to talk to somebody. I did an event some years ago that Charlton Heston hosted for me, and there were writers, producers, directors, and everybody knew everybody else, and everybody was chatting. And I heard, as I was approaching the dais in a table right in front of me, I heard one person who obviously knew another person lean over to the table and say, "I didn't know you were a conservative." I mean, this is the way you have to hide.
I didn't know you were a fellow Jew. I didn't know you were a fellow Catholic. I mean,
Well, and then there was a group called Intermission, which was this interfaith organization, and they met weekly. And I am not making this up. Their meetings were hidden. They didn't announce where they were going to be.
I know. I heard about that organization. And look, you would not see me walking down the street, Brent, with a MAGA hat on. I'm not putting a Trump 2020 bumper sticker on my car because you know what? I know things are going to happen. But if somebody still has an Obama sticker on their car from 2012 or a Hillary for president, Hillary Kane sticker, they don't have any fear from any of the right, and that should tell you all. It just reminds me of the old saying: if Israel gave up its weapons, if the Arabs gave up their weapons, there would be peace. If Israel gave up their weapons, there'd be no Israel. And that's what it comes down to here. we're in exactly the same position where this enemy is increasingly violent and physically violent and hostile to a basic precept of American tradition, legal, constitutional authority. It's ingrained into our DNA. I thought the right of free speech, and yet it's truly under attack. It's kind of like, the left also says there's no war on Christmas, Brent. You're imagining that. Of course, we love the holidays. Season's greetings to you, right?
Yeah. I will tell you that when I stated before the election that I did believe either way there was going to be violence, no matter how it came out. Different kinds of violence, however. You were going to have, if Hillary Clinton won, I believed you were going to have that crazy who does something crazy, in a car, because there are crazies on both sides. However, if Trump won, it was going to be organized violence and well-funded violence. And that's exactly what you're saying. That's exactly what you're saying. You're seeing radicals being monetized and weaponized to the point that, again, conservatives exercising their free speech as simply as putting a bumper sticker on. Have to be considered. This is nationwide. This is not Connecticut. This is Texas. This is Arizona. This is Tennessee. This is Alabama. You realize if you do that, if you put a yard sign up, if you put a button on, if you put a MAGA hat on, how many times have we seen, because there are things called videos where people are being slugged, people are being confronted, people are being tackled, they're being beat up and bloodied, just because eggs thrown in their faces, all because they are exercising their free speech and supporting the president of the United States. That's too controversial.
And the flag is racist, too. Don't forget about that. Yeah. So if you pledge allegiance to the United States of America, you're a racist, of course. Who would think otherwise, right?
Well, listen, I've got to jump off.
I know.
We have another show we got to do.
All right. Well, we want to have you on again. You really have devoted your life to something that really is worth saving, that really does have meaning. You're a warrior and a crusader for freedom. We really appreciate it. I guess we find you at mrc.org. The book Unmasked, where do we find that? I guess Amazon and wherever fine books used to be sold, right?
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Hey, questions, comments, email me, kl@kerrylutz.com. We'll pass it on to Brent. Thanks so much, Brent.
Thank you.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.